My husband is a perfect man, but I was swayed by a taller, more handsome guy and slept with him. I need advice on how to keep my family together. I need some advice on how to keep my family together. I have made some mistakes, and the receipt is going to break my family, if it hasn't already. My husband and I have been married for 12 years, together for almost 16. We are both 34 years old. We have 2 beautiful children, a 10-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. My husband is a wonderful man, a very good provider, although we both work, a wonderful father. My parents love my husband more than they love my brother, or myself for that matter. All my female friends gush over how lucky I am to have locked him down. Yet, with all the above, I had an affair. I've met this other man at work. He works in the same building as myself, a different office, different floor. He was taller than my husband, spends more time in the gym than my husband, he has no family of his own. Perfect chiseled chin, handsome like a model, etc. Other man started giving attention to me, and slowly I gave in. I decided that Mr. Mom at home was not enough for me. I convinced myself that my husband is not giving me enough attention. After 2 months of courting, other man takes me to a hotel room after work, and we sleep together. It was the worst experience of my life. It was all exciting until we started getting physical, and it all felt wrong. There was an immense amount of guilt and shame that took control of me. I realized it was not what I wanted, that I am making a huge mistake. I went home. At home, my husband was entertaining the kids. They were in front of the TV, and husband was doing theatrics for the kids, pretending to have an imaginary sword fight with an enemy, and the kids were all laughter and giggles. He was telling them a story or something. I stood there and watched them for a few minutes, then went and took a shower, and no amount of water could wash the shame I felt. So I started doing what I could to repent. I had no intention of confessing to my husband, but decided I will become the best version of myself for him. So we started getting intimate every day. Started cooking more at home, started having date nights again, because my parents were more than happy to babysit at the end of a simple phone call. I can say that our relationship was better than ever. 6 weeks later, other man approached me at work and told me he wanted to repeat our session. I told him no, that it was a mistake, and to leave me alone. He insisted, and I told him I love my husband and that other man is not half the man my husband is. Later that day, I go back home, kiss my husband hello, have small talk with him, and go take a shower before we go out for a movie. I came out of the shower, and I could just tell something was wrong. Husband was looking at his phone, and he was sobbing. I asked him what was wrong, and he handed me his phone. Other man sent him a few messages, detailing how we spent together, how we planned it, screenshots of messages, the receipt from the hotel, some pictures, etc. Husband asked me if it was true, and I was truthful about everything. He asked me if I had ever intended to confess, and I told him I would have taken this to the grave with me. I tried to explain it was all a mistake, that I regret it more than anything, that I will do anything to repent, and pleaded with him not to leave. Well, he left for 2 days, did not answer my calls, did not answer my texts. I tried to get a hold of him at his work, but was told he took a few days off. Then he came home, spent some time with the kids, and started packing a bag for himself. Told me we are done, that if I think I can do anything I want and suffer no consequences, he can do whatever he wants, and damn the consequences. He then told me how much he sacrificed for us and our relationship and our marriage. He never finished school because our son came along, and we needed money more than he needed to finish school. He abandoned friends because I was not comfortable with them. He put me ahead of his own needs and desires. That he spends more time with the kids than I do, and while he loves the kids to death, he never has time for himself. I, however, go out with friends after work. And with all this, with everything he does for me, I have the gall to cheat on him. He loved me unconditionally through all my faults and issues, and I entertained an affair. He doesn't see how he can spend his life with someone who has no respect for him. That he should have known that all the attention I've given him lately was just guilt and it was not genuine. That it is time he concentrates on himself for once. And he moved out. We have individual finances. He earns almost 3 times my pay. We have a joint account where we both deposit money for bills, groceries, etc. We have another account where we deposit for the kids. And another account where we deposit for emergencies, savings, etc. He received his salary last week and promptly deposited his usual amounts to our joint accounts. So that was a relief. It lets me think he is not completely checked out of this mess I created. We are supposed to meet tomorrow and discuss where we are and what the future will be. I want to absolutely make it clear to him I have made a horrible mistake, and I will do anything he wants of me. I will take more responsibilities around the house, cut down from my time with friends and focus more on the kids. I want him to go back and finish school if he wants that. I am so desperate I am willing to allow him to go and sleep with other women if that's what he wants. I just am not sure how to talk with him without sounding manipulating. He never mentioned a divorce through all this, and hasn't told anyone as far as I know. I have told my mother, asking for advice, and she was very disappointed in me. Asked her to not tell anyone else, and to my knowledge she has not. Him not bringing divorce into the mix gives me some hope, but I am scared of what tomorrow will mean, and what he might tell me. Maybe tomorrow he asks me for a divorce. I just need some advice. My affair was a wake-up call. I don't want to lose the best thing in my life. Any advice will be appreciated. Update. I guess I will find out what happened sooner than I thought. He asked me to take the kids to my parents for the rest of the day, and meet him in a few hours. The good thing is he wants to meet at a place where we used to go when we were younger. The bad thing is all the preparations I was putting together, writing the letter as some posters have recommended, etc. will have to be put aside. Thank you. Relevant comments. You want to fix things after you've already cheated? If you were so unsatisfied, why not try and fix things before you destroy someone's life? You don't really deserve a second chance, and if he decides to continue the relationship, I guarantee it will always be at the back of his mind. Yes, people make mistakes, but yours was not a mistake. You spent 2 months building an emotional relationship with this man before you decided to get physical. You're actually terrible, and I hope you learn your lesson and treat those you love better in the future. Opie. There was nothing to fix before my affair. There was nothing wrong with our marriage. No fights and no resentment. Now I have broken it, and it needs to be fixed. Yes, I am a terrible person. This has not been a lesson, this has been a turning point. I was selfish and I am paying for it. And whatever price it may cost me, I am willing to pay it in order to have husband back at home. Comment. How did the other man get contact info? Opie. He went to the reception at my office and told them he can't get a hold of me, and if they happen to have my husband or my parents' phone number, because it is an emergency. Update. Husband is aware of everything I will be writing below. As I mentioned last time, husband called me and asked me to leave the kids with my parents. Then asked me to meet him a few hours later. We were to meet at a nice little restaurant we used to frequent when we were younger, where he took me to our first date. Initially I thought of it as a positive that he wants me somewhere familiar where we have history. But as the hours went by, I was sure this was just poetic justice. That the place where we had our first date will be the place where he ends it all out. Like a cycle, it ends where it started. I suppose the mind can mess with you like that. Turn a positive into a negative at a snap. Even though I've seen him almost daily the past 6 weeks, he was avoiding me and I never had a proper look at him. He lost weight, got a new haircut, was dressed very nice. Like it was for an occasion. Dumping my sorry ass and getting along with his life would have been it, I suppose. I wanted to hug him, but he cut me short. I will never forget the words he spoke to me. He said, "Have a seat. Let me speak. I want my wife back. Something happened to her and I don't know where she is. You know my wife better than I do, so I want to ask you if you have any idea what has happened to her. Can you tell me why she found it so easy to betray both myself and our children?" I started crying, and he told me he didn't invite me there to make me cry. He told me he has a few things to tell me, and that they will be painful things to hear, and to let him know if I am strong enough to listen to him or if I want some space first. I nodded no, and he started. He told me that the first 2 weeks after he found out, he wanted nothing but to hurt me. He loathed having to come and pick up the kids for practice because I would be there. He wanted to go to my work and let everyone know I am a war. He wanted to call my parents and siblings and let them know. To tell his parents and brother. To tell everyone we know. He wanted to divorce me, taking the kids away from me. His mind was all over the place. But all these feelings were forced. He was hurt. He still is hurt. But I had plenty of time to think. He knows what he wants to do. But before he tells me, he wants me to answer a question. He asked why. And I answered the most sincerely I could. Because I could. I didn't need to. I didn't have to. But I could. He nodded. Then asked me if I regret it. I said I do. He said he believes me. He then asked me if I am sorry for being exposed. I told him no. My actions have consequences, and I will live with them. But that I hope that whatever shape those consequences will take, losing him will not be it. He nodded. He asked me if I ever thought about the kids, and how their lives might change because of my actions. Some people recommended I be brutally honest when answering his questions. People who went through my situation. So I told my husband that when I was in bed with the other man, I immediately felt guilt, and the kids were my first thought and what a big mistake I am making. But that before it was all about myself, no kids, no husband, no family, just myself. He asked me if we used protection, and I told him we did, but other man never finished because my guilt was too much and left a few minutes after we started. He nodded, but he was swallowing hard, and it was clear he had a hard time asking me about this. He asked me if I would have it within me to forgive him if the roles were reversed. And I told him that I struggled with this same question, and while being in this situation I want to immediately say, yes, of course I would forgive you. The truth is I don't think I could forgive him. He nodded again. I told him I realize how selfish I am to ask him to come back. But I am willing to fight for him and do anything he asks of me. He asked me if I want him back at home. I said yes. Then he asked me if I understand what I am asking him to do. I am asking him to come back home, eat his pride, no, kill his pride. kill any traces of ego he might still have. Asked me if I can imagine what this whole situation is doing to his self-worth and esteem. It was painful to listen to him. I felt sick with myself, and to be honest, I felt like we're not husband and wife anymore. I felt this meeting was more for closure than anything, and I started to get used with the idea. Many people in the previous thread said as much, that he will not want anything to do with me, and this is more of a this is how we split meeting. The fact that he next told me he spoke with a lawyer cemented this idea. He told me he had a few appointments with a lawyer. Papers were made. Silence. None of us spoke for a few minutes. My mind started going to the kids, trying to figure out how to plead with husband to not go for full custody, how to explain to my parents and his parents my actions, and so on. He then told me that the kids should remain with my parents until they start school. Or maybe longer after that. My parents live close to their school, so it would be easy for the kids. I asked him why, and he said if we are to work on ourselves, we need some time alone. That we should both take a few days off and leave the city. I asked him if this means he will move back in. He said yes. I asked him if this means he is giving me a second chance. He said yes. But he told me this is the hardest thing he has ever had to do. That a week ago he was ready to serve me with divorce papers. He told me he doesn't hate me. He had time to think, to calm down, and to think some more. I betrayed his trust. He told me it would have been better if I told him in the morning, I am going to fuck some other man, and I'll be back home for dinner. At least that wouldn't have been behind his back. He is not sure how he can trust me again. But he will try. So I enumerated some things from the previous thread. Open phone policy and GPS tracking. He looked at me and told me he is not the police or a detective. That there is no way for him to rebuild his trust in me if he has to always check up on me. So I asked me if he wants me to leave my job. He told me that would be a mistake. We don't need the money my salary brings in, but it is not for him to demand me to leave my job. He knows I love my work, and that would be selfish of him. He also told me, besides, other man will no longer be an issue. I asked him what that means, but he said nothing and changed the subject. I asked him to go to marriage counseling. He doesn't want to. He told me whatever issues he will have to work through, he will do so himself, and doesn't need someone else to tell him what to do. However, if I want to go to individual counseling, he is fine with that. He just doesn't see it working for himself. So we will start clean. He will not hold it over me, but that doesn't mean it is forgotten. We have a lot of rebuilding ahead, and while there will be no, at least I haven't fucked another woman in our future talks, he will not be shy about the matter. He doesn't want us to tell anyone. For me, not for himself. If we start telling people, they might alienate me from their social groups, and he doesn't want the mother of his children to suffer. By proxy, the children will suffer. If I am shunned by the other mothers and friends, the kids will miss on play dates and other group activities, and he doesn't want that. He made it clear he is not keeping this a secret for my benefit. But he hopes I understand I should suffer. At the least, I should be ashamed. Which I am. We chatted some more, but the above were the most important points. Later that night, he was home. He settled in the guest room. We talked some more. Felt weird without kids around. But he was there and it was nice. We sat on the couch, and I told him I want to tell our parents about the affair. He said he doesn't think it is a good idea. While my parents may be more lenient because I am their daughter, his parents will have no reason to handle the situation with gloves. But I insisted, and I told him that my actions should have some consequences, and that so far it feels like he is allowing me to get away scot-free. So he agreed we could tell our parents. Then we got intimate. I surrendered completely to him, and it was the best experience of my sexual life. He then carried me in his arms to my bed, because I was exhausted and I would not have made it there myself. He slept in the guest room. We both went to work the next day, Monday. When we got back home, we left to visit the kids and spend time with them. When we came back home, we talked and talked and talked. We decided once a week we will have a status checkup, discussing what we like or hated about each other the week previous. I decided I will go to individual therapy. He decided he wants a room for himself, a man cave. Wednesday we had both our parents together, and I came clean to them. My father took it the hardest, and he was very upset when he figured out my mom already knew. Husband's parents were not pleased, to say the least. But they said they trust my husband's judgment. Husband was adamant they not speak a word of this to anyone. Told them we wanted them to know because we respect them, but that nobody else should find out, and this is his decision. Husband's parents dropped a bomb on us too. They too reconciliated. My mother-in-law had several affairs, and they worked through it. This was before my husband was born, but after his brother was born. Husband joked and asked if he is a baby will fix this child. We both took a week off from work next week. We'll leave to a cabin in the mountains, where we can have peace and quiet, and can hike and be just the two of us. We haven't had a fight yet, and it's weird because I've read fights will be frequent after an affair, even during reconciliation. He hasn't asked me anything more about the affair aside for the details from our date last Sunday. We have some books we will take with us to read about affairs and rebuilding after them. That is all I have to say about it. I apologize for the length, but I felt the need to talk with someone before I start my therapy once we return. Thank you to those that gave me advice. Top comment. If any portion of this story or your original post is true, I wish you and your husband the best, but only for your kids' sakes. Your husband deserves to get back the life he had before he discovered he was married for 12 years to someone who would fuck some guy at work. Because she could. Your husband is either a saint or a complete dolt. You had a perfect life and dropped a bomb on him for no reason. Opie. Most of the work is on me now. I am a hypocrite. I know if I were him there would be no second chance. As painful as it is to recognize, I am also aware a big part of his decision is because of the kids. He won't say it together, and I know he will read this post. I will do anything I can to make his reasons to stay be worth it. This week we talked more than we have in years. Serious talks, happy talks, I cried a lot. I think this will make us stronger. Nothing wakes you up like this particular experience. And it makes you realize what is important. Thanks for the kind wishes. Final update. We are still together. There was an air of uncertainty, above all hope I was illustrating in my update 11 months ago because we've all read relationship posts here. I am aware how few marriages make it after one of the partners cheats, even if reconciliation is attempted. We had a huge fight at some point, unrelated to my infidelity, and once it was done and we said our sorries, I realized he never once mentioned the event, my affair, to get the upper hand on me during the fight or after. We have talked about the event multiple times at length, but he never used it as leverage in fights or when he wanted to have his way. He did get annoyed with me because I had a number of books about fixing a relationship after infidelity, and he said he wants me to do things because I want to do them, not because a book tells me. If I follow what the book tells me to do, how does he know I am genuine, and not just going through the motions? For that reason we haven't gone to marriage counseling. Many people have recommended marriage counseling, and quite a few people who have gone through similar experiences as myself have said marriage counseling is what made them survive and reconcile. This being said, I will be honest, it never felt like I was walking on eggshells around my husband, or that he wanted me to be all submissive and meek around him. He was very honest with me, and we talked our feelings at length. Our intimate life has become more passionate, and as I mentioned before, he became more possessive in bed. My sister-in-law is getting a divorce, and is currently living with us. Her husband was revealed as a serial cheater. He got another woman pregnant, and this is how it all came to light. My sister-in-law is a smart cookie, and it didn't take her long to figure out about the event a year ago. The only people we ever told was our parents, and they haven't talked with anyone else about it. To say my sister-in-law blossomed a passionate hate for me would be an understatement. We went from very good friends to fire and brimstone. I understand her completely, and thankfully, she changed her mind about me. But it wasn't easy to go from whore to, I still hate you, but you're my friend, and your husband is on my ass to forgive you. Her financial situation is not good. She wasn't working, and her husband was the only source of income in their household. She has nowhere to go, so she will live with us for the foreseeable future. It would have been impossible for her to live with us if she didn't become civil. Fortunately, she was witness to my road to redemption, and we had a heart-to-heart discussion. We are back to being friends now. 3 months ago, out of nowhere, completely unexpected or planned, I found out I am pregnant. I suppose with the amount of intimacy we've been sharing this past year, it was inevitable. My husband is over the moon. My kids, not so thrilled, but the idea they will have a baby brother or sister is growing on them. My son was told by friends at school that we, his parents, will now only have time for the baby, and will ignore him and will stop loving him. My husband told me that there seem to be challenges ahead of us bigger than the event going forward, and how we handle them is going to define us in the eyes of our children. I think my son took the teasing at school harder than expected because a year ago, when my husband moved back home, we had our kids stay with his parents or my parents for about a month, while we worked our issues out. We expected we will fight or yell at each other or who knows what, and we didn't want our children to witness that. Thankfully, none of that came to fruit. But my son took that month hard, not seeing us as much as he was used to. Kids at school told him we are divorcing. This is something we do go to therapy for as a family, and it has helped our children immensely. Bottom line is, after many heart-to-heart talks, it is clear to both my husband and I, we are not having another baby to fix our marriage. We didn't plan for it, but the baby will be here in less than 6 months. A point I don't really want to talk about, but I have been asked to death about in requests for updates as the other man, and what happened to him. I mentioned how my husband contacted his firm's HR, sent a letter, and told me everything was handled. All I know is that he is not working in my building anymore, be it because he was fired or transferred somewhere else. My husband said that the other man tried to blackmail me, and because the blackmail didn't work, he messaged my husband with the evidence of our affair. His firm would not be happy with one of their employees being involved with blackmail, even low-level blackmail. To be honest, I don't really care what happened to the other man, and haven't made any effort to find out. I'd like to thank those who messaged me with kind words of support, and those who had less than kind words to say to me. And the gentleman who messaged me a week ago to explain that my husband is more possessive with me in the bedroom because he no longer sees me as his wife, but as a bang mate. As I mentioned before, my husband is aware I am writing these posts, and he had a laugh at some of the more exotic messages I received.